We have recently been putting a lot of talk and videos about, of course, the what is known as the retained EU law bill. This is one of those bills that very often goes through Parliament, which has tried to fly under the radar, partly because, shall we say, of the chaos that Liz Truss caused and her own mini budget being announced just 3 days before that mini budget itself. It's managed to go somewhat unnoticed under the radar. But however, that is now changing. With Jacob Rees-Mogg now firmly put back on the backbenches, the question is whether or not Rishi Sunak is going to go forward with this bill. It seems like he may not. Yet on Tuesday in Parliament, even his own fellow Conservative MPs were not really that enthused about this bill at all, knowing full well that this would take up a lot of capacity from civil servants, with different departments having to review sometimes over 400 to 600 laws. And these laws themselves cover everything from workers' rights, holiday pay, environmental protections, even air safety regulations. And as we discussed before, the problem with this bill, just turning them off that quickly is not a guaranteed that they are going to be replaced or even retained. This could create some huge black holes, which causes massive chaos in itself. But as we said, that was always the goal. Because the goal of the Brexiteers was they knew that they could not dismantle these EU laws one by one. They have to get rid as many as they possibly can, because they know if there's some of them in particular, like the holiday pay rights bill, is going to cause a huge uproar. So better to get rid of the all at once approach rather than fight these, shall we say, individual laws separately. And like I say, that's their approach, because they know some will be kept, but they know the vast majority will probably not. And that's the reason behind this law. But anyway, luckily, at least the public does seem to be aware of this more. And like I say, please do write to your MP, tell them that, this bill needs to be dropped completely. These laws really need to be properly scrutinized, and especially if the Brexiteers really were all about, parliamentary sovereignty and scrutiny. This bill takes that exactly away from Parliament to scrutinize these laws. So, as always, before we do get into this, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-notation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. So today we go over to the Yorkshire Bylines with their coverage of this, with the title of "The Bonfire of EU Rules Will Not Be Lit Just Yet." Just days after receiving its second reading in the Commons, a bill designed to purge the UK statute book of any hint of EU-connected laws by the end of 2023 now appears to be at risk of being kicked into the long grass. The Financial Times reports the government officials saying on Wednesday that the targets will just not be met. An aide to the Prime Minister added that the new Brexit delivery unit would not even be created, with one ally saying that the time for changes in the machinery of government has passed. A campaign video released just this summer pledged that in his first 100 days as Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak would, quote, review or repeal the post-Brexit EU laws, all 2,400 of them. Sunak's government is now seen to be backtracking, as if he's also managing to sneak into number 10 amid all these recent comings and goings. And this is, I think, the big one, is that there will be a colossal Brexiteer meltdown coming on this, because this was their plan all along. As we said, you can't get rid of each of these individual bills separately. Like I say, particularly the area of workers' rights. Not only that, but you've got areas of regulation around industry. So if you get rid of some of those, then all of a sudden, some of those industries can't actually trade with the EU. Again, our biggest market still after all this time. Like I say, global Britain never, ever worked, despite how much they tried to push the UK in that direction. The EU isn't going anywhere. But anyway, that's of course a topic for another time. But anyway, back to back to the Brexiteer meltdown that's incoming. So he will now face a Brexiteer meltdown if he fails to implement the plans in the retained EU law, the Revocation and Reform Bill, which could see at least 2,417 more EU retained regulations removed from the UK statute book by the end of next year, according to former Conservatives MEPs. David Campbell-Barman, who served as a member for the European Parliament for the East of England and once stood as a UKIP candidate back in the 2005 general election, was also UKIP's party chairman. He said on Twitter that if the reports were true, it could lead to a Brexiteer meltdown and Rishi would be in big trouble. The new PM has not named or even dedicated a Brexit Opportunities Minister, a title previously held by Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was sacked by Sunak. Downing Street has effectively downgraded the work of overseeing Brexit opportunities to a junior minister in the business department now under Grant Shapps, and it is no longer seen as a standalone job. Because remember, when Mogg was in that office as the Brexit Opportunities Minister, it was just embarrassing. He went out and said, please give me ideas. And what opportunities did he show or provide? He provided none. He did nothing. And as we've said for years, we've said this for years, if there were genuine benefits of Brexit that the Brexiteers could actually show, they would be shouting it from the rooftops. But they're not, because they know that the Brexit, true Brexit benefits ended under Liz Truss. And that's why we have to hope that there is a serious rethink about Brexit and even rejoining the single market and customs union. Because remember, that was Leave's position, that we would remain in the single market and customs union. Because you know my favorite quote from Daniel Hannan, only a fool would leave the single market and customs union. And even he is now saying that, yes, we should probably rejoin the single market and customs union. So, yeah, yeah, honestly, the Brexit saga never disappoints not to be fun. So back to it. So the government officials have also claimed the Prime Minister is considering even whether to actually press ahead with the 2023 sunset clause for the EU regulations, which would see all EU law that still exists in the UK revoked by the end of next year unless ministers intervene. And remember, one of the quotes that came from one of the ministers, I think it was an SNP minister, said that this feels like they're putting a gun to Parliament's head with this very bill. It doesn't make sense just to have a sunset clause where they all just end automatically when you've got so many laws having to dedicate so many times to this. Yeah, it really doesn't make that much sense. Ministers have already been warned that hundreds of civil servants would be required to assess all these 2,400 pieces of the retained EU law and decide whether they should be repealed or transferred to UK legislation. And Rees-Mogg has warned that his business department alone would need to deploy over 400 staff to review or repeal the 300 pieces of EU law for which it was responsible. The health department estimated that it would need at least 100 staff to carry out the exact same exercise. And according to officials briefed on the process, although some ministers believe the civil service has exaggerated the scale of the task, one was reported to have said, "What a waste." And it really is. It is an absolute waste of time. What's wrong with this law? What are wrong with these laws? Because they seem to be working pretty well. And I think this is once again just an attempt, like with the Northern Ireland Protocol, where the Brexiteers see that you've got Northern Ireland still in the single market and customs union, outperforming the rest of the regions, and are still very much desperate to try and pull Northern Ireland out of that situation because they don't want it to be used as a test case for, well, how well Brexit has done. You've got the retained EU law is exactly the same. If we've got all these retained EU laws, Why did we leave? If these EU laws were so bad, how come we haven't got rid of them? Because most of them are, probably all of them indeed, are very, very good, and they range, as we've said, from holiday rights protections of pay, um, environmental protections, to even air safety. Getting rid of them just like that is not going to work. Could spell absolute disaster. And I do hope that the public does wake up to this. And like I say, if you are concerned about this, please write to your MP, email them particularly, find them on Twitter, tell them that, tell them to say that they need to, shall we say, bin this bill, because it is an absolutely awful bill. So hopefully, this bill will be sort of consigned. It does seem to be going that way, but like I say, I think a bit more public pressure, and I think we can very, very safely resign this to, once again, the trash heap that is Brexit. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.